Hey guys, Mustached Tom here to review the movie Don't Move. Now, it's obviously a little bit late on this one. You can see the release date there, October. We're already pretty midway into this month, so apologies for the lack of movie reviews, but Let's Plays have been, at least predictably, been taking up way more time now with the longer games and such, so I had a longer focus on those, so I had to set back and dial back into the movie zone for a bit here. Now, I lost my notes for this one, so apologies in advance. I'll still try to remember as much as possible and still try to review it as objectively as possible. With that out of the way, let's get into it. So, I unfortunately don't remember the main character's name, but she is an individual who is dealing with depression after losing a child, in which she does attempt to go further drastic in that way, going up to the mountainside and getting ready to commit suicide. She is then proceeded to be stopped by this young gentleman who ends up being the main antagonist of this movie, whose name I also forget. But he pretty much tells her this story that, and at the tail end of it suggests you may do whatever you please, and so on and so forth. With these notes in hand, he makes his way, and she eventually joins him. So, with that being the case, when they are parked and getting ready to leave, his vehicle being parked relatively close to hers, next to hers, in fact, in such a way that she's having difficulty backing up, he grabs some sort of device and begins his assault on her, and eventually injecting her with this paralysis drug thing that is going to kick into effect, which is utilized for the purposes of this movie's context, which is she can't move, is the point of the whole thing being called Don't Move. But I digress. At any point, so she, while still having time, because it takes time for it to kick in, is trying to find a place to hide deep in the forest. Remember, she just came from the mountainside, so trekking down to the forest, still not in that ideal position in terms of area. And eventually, she does get captured. Or like, she's being caught up with pretty consistently as she's losing her nerves and stuff like that. So, as she's pretty much almost done, or like completely frozen, one of the last things she manages to do is finagle her body into a body of water. So she's carried downstream from her current position, which wasn't great, and she eventually sort of floats up to, or further down, I guess in this case, to a different part of the forest, where she eventually gets noticed by this older gentleman, who notices her predicament and decides to take her in. It is only moments later, after using her eyes, because she can still blink, to express either a yes or a no, that she's able to dictate to him the basics of her situation, and thus he comes back a little bit later with a way to carry her inside, call the police as well. So, with that time skip established, we then eventually cut to him, the antagonist, getting to the house. He makes his way up, creating this story and mixing in some of the details that she had provided him with her real story as a part of his story, as well as his own grievances and so on and so forth. Which is what primarily makes him an effective antagonist in these circumstances, that ability to come across as believable because he's telling this, well, real story in this case, but it was from her perspective. So she's unable to do much of anything, and it's up to this older gentleman to gauge whether or not of what to do, because he's spinning this whole new narrative about how she's, incapable of responding in any meaningful way, and so on and so forth. And he eventually wisens up to this not being on the up and up, but it's a bit too late. And with that established, a big back and forth happens between the two, the older man and the antagonist here. Eventually, of course, with the movie runtime still on the clock, the antagonist outwins, killing the older man in this case, and starting a fire. Now she, desperate to, is only gaining feeling back in one of her fingers, so she's closing and opening the blinds to get his attention back. So it seems as if his intention wasn't to kill her immediately, otherwise, as she kind of points out at some point in the movie, he would have just let her jump in this instance. So she kind of, and he almost alludes to this, I guess you could call a weakness simultaneously, as this willingness to participate in this more game-like attitude of whatever he was planning to do with her. Point being is that he eventually gets her out, as she's still pretty groggy, and is able to make his way down to, they make their way down to, at this point in the movie, a gas station, which has other people in there. She's still barely able to move, and he's out and about doing his thing, and she's just trying to desperately move what little she can to try to gauge the attention of anybody. It's not really working all too well. This young kid approaches at one point even, and it doesn't really do much of anything to really help her. Though I suppose, I don't know how it happens, but I suppose somebody finds something suspicious, or rather, because when this whole ordeal ends, it eventually comes across as somebody from there noticed something, I guess, and then called the cops, I also guess. So that one is a little bit on the weak side. I wish they did a little bit more to establish, whether through the establishing shots of the other people or something, or rather, to show, like, other people being like, what's up with that vehicle? Something to, like, help the audience gauge, like, that's what was actually happening in this scene that we're talking about here. That didn't seem to come across anywhere in the actual scene itself, so missed opportunity to, sell the idea without explicitly having to say it. You have a visual medium, so, opportunity lost, so points, a little bit of a point reduction there, obviously. Point being is that the cops are eventually called. He creates this new, story, saying, like, this is my drunk girlfriend, rather than, incapable of answering all fully. because her eyes are open and, you know, she can, like, move slightly, so I guess that would need to track with, like, with where his story was previously, so, seemingly trying to act within the confines of the situation that is developing. The cop eventually notices her movement. He he finds himself once again on the attacking side. Yes, attacking a cop in this instance. Which another bizarre thing, but I find this odd. Do cops still travel by themselves? I thought they always, like, traveled. I thought, like, at bare minimum, there's at least 2 cops per scene, right? I thought that's how it would work. Do they not do this in real life? Like, I haven't had an ordeal or an encounter with cops in a long, long time, so I wouldn't know. Like, I have had 3 encounters with cops. 1 not so great, and 2 being like, oh, the cops are being helpful, so you know. But, like, okay, so I can go over those since I mentioned them. Like, this one time when I was really young, I got in this fight, and then the family called the cops because I broke the glasses that the person I was fighting had broken, and then they called the cops, and then I guess I almost got arrested or whatever, and then my mom was able to, like, smooth things over because I was a dumb kid at the time, so I'm really glad that she was there to be like, hey, and explain stuff. And then there was a time way before that, like some point in like a way earlier grade, where I was like trying to get home for like, because I was used to getting picked up by my parents. This is like a long time ago. And it was my first time trying to get home by myself, essentially, because I noticed my parents were particularly late that day. So I was like, you know, I think I figured it out by now, but I was still young, so, like I headed down, like, almost 2 streets, and I was like, oh, fuck, I don't remember how to get home, because I was even younger back then. So, like, I'm over there crying my eyeballs out as a kid, and then, like, there happened to be a cop there, who, like, pulled me back or whatever to, like, where I was previously, and then eventually my parents came. And my last interaction with the cops was after Comic-Con 2014, so again, a long time ago. I was volunteering back then, and I was coming back from home super duper late, and the cops were, you know, busy on that day because the convention, a lot of people dressed up, a lot of moving parts, and a cop car happened to be passing by, and so the cop car stopped and was asking me, like, where the heck I was going, and I explained I'm going home. I came home from, you know, doing the whole Comic-Con volunteer thing, and I explained that to him, and then he, like, told me to get in the cop car. I did. And then he asked for my address. I gave it. And then he's like, alright, I'm going to give you a ride home. And I was like, oh, cool. So he gave me a ride home. So, see, now every cop story is going to be a bad one. See that? Crazy. Point being is that, like, those were my interactions with cops, which was, like, I guess in those instances, yeah, they were one. But, like, I'm surprised that, like, we're still in 2024, and that seems to be the way in still in operating how movies operate, in, like, being like, oh, there's only the one cop or whatever. I don't know, because I think the idea of this is that if there were 2 cops in this scene, the movie would be over, right? because like the one cop would be the same suspicious cop asking the questions, gauging where everything is, and then the other cop would be like back there noticing this unfold, and then that, when and if he attacked the antagonist, the other cop would just like pin him down or whatever, right? So there are these things you have to think about as a writer and as a filmmaker, like, how do I stop my antagonist in a meaningful way? How do I get this like scene that deals with the cops, and there's meant to be all this tension about will he get arrested or won't he, and all this stuff, and it clearly comes across as the writers came into this struggling a little bit here at the latter half point of the movie, as she's becoming to as early as the gas station, and as it progresses forward, it seemingly seems like they were struggling a little bit more and more here. And yeah, so my guess is that they wrote it as one cop because, well, he attacks that one cop, which allows him to get away again. So it is just her and him once more, and eventually, he's like, alright, my plans are getting fucked around with. At one point, I forget when this happens, like, he gets a call from his wife and daughter, because despite the crazy, he does have a family. So, like, the daughter was calling about some rehearsal thing or something or other. And then the mom was like, meet us up, we're gonna come to you, and he's like, oh, damn it, my plan, so this lady that I'm kidnapping and shit. So the whole family dynamic was another wedge to, like, get him to start moving in a different direction, clearly. So not designed so much as characters, per se, because they're not. They're more so, again, they're more so to move the plot in a different direction, or get the character to move in a different direction than what we're used to. Anyway, point being is that he's, like, sick and tired of it. He's like, alright, I'm gonna take you out into this boat, and then, based on what the boat had on it, which was like this, the rope with the brick on it was where they were going with this. So the implication would be is that he was gonna ride her out there, and then tie her to said brick, I guess, and then toss her, I guess, and then let her drown. I think that was his full plan here at this point, because he was finally just fed up with her fighting back all this way. But she pleads to have this one final momentum for her lost son, so he begrudgingly agrees, and then it's through this that she's able to grab one of his two weapons. He has a gun at this point and a knife. She grabs the knife from him, using him approaching her, getting the boat, to get the knife and stab him with it. And then I believe she's able to access the gun and then shoot him as well. He's gunned down twice, I think. And then she rides, I believe at this juncture she has now full control, or at least control enough to her body now at the tail end of the movie. So she eventually gets back on the land with him dead, or dying rather, or whatever, which one, I forget which, but she essentially uses one of the lines he had used prior to essentially cap off the movie in regards to thanking him for something or other. So yeah, that was Don't Move. And I think this movie was quite basic, but I do think that along the way, as I mentioned, again, the final act primarily, or middle to final act, is where the movie began to struggle in its writing. And again, it comes down to small things like having, your background characters show a little bit of suspicion, to sort of obvious cheats like the one cop, to, him suddenly deciding now is finally enough, he's going to end it, to things like that. It's very clear that, this premise is extremely fairly simple, so the writing should follow that context of it being relatively simple. And yet there are these little cheats that some are probably a little bit harder to ignore than others. I guess I can understand the cop one, I think. Again, I'm not sure why cops would do that in real life, but here we are. The one with them at the gas station, again, probably a little bit more build up in the suspicion era, probably would have helped a lot with making that scene make any logical sense. Would have helped a lot. And then, I guess his timing to shift over to wanting to kill her seems fine, I guess. Though he's also being simultaneously a little bit careless with it, but whatever. I don't know. Yeah, that one seems a little harder to clean up in a meaningful way, with her having a lot harder time in moving and all. Or, regaining it or somewhat. But at any rate, in terms of the score, I'd still probably give it a 6 out of 10. Like, I'd probably say it's a little bit above average. But obviously the mistakes don't quite add up to a 7 for me. And that's where I would place Don't Move in terms of a score. Or, Anyway, that's my review of Don't Move, and if you ended up enjoying this full review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. Want to head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers, second to my PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly, and third to my Discord server, where you can join, collab, shield, all that close stuff, and until next time, everyone, bye-bye.